Well, good morning. I'm Brent Adams here with your Rural Strong Morning Ag Report for this Friday, October 6th, the 279th day of 2023. Leading off the headlines this morning, the Congress is paralyzed amid a House speakership void and a looming new shutdown next month, preventing action on the spending bill and policies like the Farm Bill. The House can do little, if any, legislative work until it elects a new speaker, while the Senate struggles to advance its own spending bills amid a shutdown threat looming again next month. Senate GOP Whip John Toon.
We have until November the 17th. I regret the fact that we're not going to be here next week. I think the Senate ought to be in here next week working on the appropriations bills because we have a short amount of time and a lot of work to get done.
The House passed 4 spending bills but killed its USDA FDA bill over farm program cuts and limits on a mail order abortion drug. The Senate passed no spending bills. Democratic leader Chuck Schumer.
We're working very hard in the Senate to get things done. We have passed 12 bills out of committee, bipartisan appropriations bills, and now we are working to get those bipartisan bills to the floor of the Senate.
But that won't matter until a new House speaker is picked and bills move again there to avert a shutdown. Senate GOP leader Mitch McConnell.
Well, I think the obvious answer is we need to get a speaker, and hopefully we'll get one by next week. And I'll repeat what I said earlier, which is I think to do that job for anyone, you have to get rid of the motion to vacate.
That allows a single House member to try to oust the speaker, putting that person, McConnell says, in a hammerlock. House Ag Chair Glenn G.T. Thompson, meantime, told the roll call paper that McCarthy's historic ouster may have blown up any meaningful legislation like the Farm Bill, and he's even unsure an extension can make it through a, quote, distracted and divided House, end quote. Well, grain exports dropped to 6.82 million metric tons so far from Ukraine in the 2023-2024 marketing year. The Ag Ministry says Ukraine shipped 8.99 million tons during the same period in the prior marketing year. The first 3 days of October saw 153,000 tons of exports compared to 297,000 tons a year ago. While the ministry didn't give a reason for the drop, traders and agricultural unions say the country's ports on the Black Sea are getting blocked. Russia is attacking ports along the Danube River, too. The exported volumes include 3.4 million tons of wheat, 2.7 million tons of corn, and 625,000 tons of barley. The Black Sea grain deal negotiated by the UN and Turkey ended in July. Ukraine is expected to harvest a total of 79 million tons of grain and oilseeds in 2023, with the 2023-2024 exportable surplus totals expected to reach about 50 million tons. Well, dairy markets are searching for momentum. Jenny Wackershauser of Ever.Ag, speaking at World Dairy Expo in Madison, Wisconsin, explains.
We are sitting in what we like to call the epitome of we need exports market. So traditionally in the U.S. marketplace over the last few years, exports have really driven when we've had a successful dairy market versus a struggle market. And as we say right now, the European Union has grown their milk production similarly after COVID as the U.S. has. So we are competing with them every day for cheese. So as we need to entice those international buyers to come into the U.S. market, we tend to need to correct our price on cheese down to what the European Union levels, which has been 150 to 175 cheese. So in recent weeks, as we rallied up towards $1.90 to $2 cheese, that was great for the domestic market, but it took us out of competitive spot there on getting more exports to come in.
That trend, she says, is likely to continue for a while, but there's also a tale of two markets.
Butter has been on a tear, and we set a historic high on the CME last week. We broke 330. We're now pushing 340 butter, which has been kind of a seasonality play here going into holiday season. They're getting their buys in for going into holiday buying. It sets the price for kind of that holiday price for going into retail. So it's seasonality. This is normally a strong time of year for butter. This is an exceptionally strong run that comes a lot off the heat that the South and Western dairies had this summer.
She says export markets are affected by the strong value of the U.S. dollar as well.
So every time we see our cheese price fall to a level that's attractive to our trading partners, that is another thing that's hampering that. So we've also seen strength in the last 2-3 weeks in the U.S. dollar, which makes us need to correct that price even more to entice that buyer to come in. The other good things we see on the export side, though, are Saudi Arabia, some of those trading partners we have, as crude oil prices increase, they tend to come as a stronger buying partner on the dairy-specific side. There are some things that go into this, but we're also moving into that seasonality time of year. We tend to put in our rallies this time of year and have a much softer market going into late December, January, and February.
And domestically, demand appears a bit stagnant.
So as we talk with our clients on managing their risk here on these milk markets, it's with an eye on where does our risk lie going into 2024. We are struggling right now to see this cheese market justify a $2 price to it. There's the consumer pushback. They're cutting back on that. So that's when we talk about that domestic demand is hard to get to increase right now. A lot of that is the outside market pressure. They're seeing student loan payments come back in. They're seeing maybe some more layoffs. You know, the macroeconomic things are pressuring that we're not seeing a big increase in both either retail or restaurant traffic.
That's Jenny Wackershauser of Ever.ag. A special thanks to Brian Winnekins of WRDN Radio in Durand, Wisconsin for that audio. Well, consumers may expect to pay less for a Thanksgiving turkey this November thanks to improved supplies. Bernd Nelson, American Farm Bureau Federation economist, says prices have fallen since highly pathogenic avian influenza peaked last September.
Now, since then, biosecurity measures and the practices that we put in place, the programs that USDA has used, have helped avian influenza slow. We're well below where we were last year, so turkey numbers have had time to rebuild.
Nelson says the average price per pound is down 22% from last year.
Our average price at this time last year was around $1.63 per pound, and right now we're looking at about $1.27 a pound. Now, that's for that 8 to 16 pound turkey that we use for a centerpiece for Thanksgiving. So that just kind of shows that we've had time to rebuild these supplies. Inflation isn't as big of a factor this year as it was last year, so turkey prices have had time to come down a little bit.
Nelson adds lower prices and higher supplies also mean increased demand.
Per capita demand for turkey is expected to increase by about 6% this year to 15.5 pounds per person in response to these lower prices. So overall, farmers and consumers alike should receive some relief from turkey prices this Thanksgiving. We've had very few avian influenza detections. In fact, June was the first month that we had 0 avian influenza detections in the last year. And this means that there's plenty of turkey to go around for Thanksgiving this year.
Full details on the cost to cook a Thanksgiving feast for 10 will be released on November 15th. To read the market intel report on turkey prices, go to fb.org. And finally, this morning, National Cooperative Month this October provides recognition for the importance of rural utility services such as electricity and telecommunications. More from USDA Radio's Rod Bain.
The nation's cooperative business model, especially as an important part of rural economies, is celebrated every October as part of National Cooperative Month. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack this week signed the proclamation observing the month and announced this year's theme of owning our identity. Among the USDA entities involved in rural cooperatives, Rural Development's Rural Utilities Service. This is our U.S. Administrator Andrew Burke.
These cooperatives are serving people who really need that nonprofit, looking out for the best economic interest of their members. Many of them have gotten into high-speed internet. We deal with rural electric cooperatives for that reason, but we also have a proud history with telephone cooperatives who are now often telecommunications cooperatives, because that was the way that people on farms and around rural America got their first telephone services as well.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Well, you can keep up with the latest from the world of agriculture by subscribing to the Tractors and Troubadours podcast from Rural Strong Media. Each week, I bring you agriculture industry newsmakers, hot-button industry issues, educational features, and the best in traditional country music. The Tractors and Troubadours podcast can be found at ruralstrongmedia.com or wherever you get your podcasts. We also invite you to join us daily on Rural Strong Radio, our 24/7 streaming radio station, found at ruralstrongmedia.com or on the Live 365 streaming radio app for your mobile device. Each day, we bring you our award-winning agriculture programming, as well as the best in traditional country music, mixed in with a little bluegrass, western swing, southern rock, and inspirational music. Again, the place to find Rural Strong Radio is ruralstrongmedia.com or the Live 365 streaming radio app. We're portable, so take us with you everywhere you go this harvest season. We'll get you through those long, challenging days this fall. Well, I'll be back again on Monday with another Rural Strong Morning Ag Report here on Steve Shetler Media. Make it a great weekend, everybody.